Sir, that machine must be glitching. The words hit the air at JFK Terminal 4 like a slap, sharp and dismissive. But they weren't the most important words spoken that Tuesday morning at 10:14 a.m. Those would come exactly 9 minutes later when a man in a faded hoodie would sign a document that would erase $4 billion from the stock market and destroy careers with the stroke of a thumb. The Bloomberg terminal 3 blocks away didn't just ding it, screamed. At 10:14 a.m. shares of Pan Atlantic Airways were trading at a healthy $42.18. By 10:23 a.m., the ticker symbol PAA was flashing violent red, plummeting in a free fall that would wipe out 67% of the company's value before the New York Stock Exchange could halt trading. Wall Street panicked. CNBC anchors shouted over each other, desperate to find the cause. Was it a crash? A terror threat? A data breach? It was one man standing at gate B14, quietly watching a Boeing 737 taxi away from the terminal. The plane he was supposed to be on. The plane they told him he couldn't board because he didn't look the part. They thought he was nobody. They thought he was just a paperwork error. They were about to learn that Marcus Williams didn't just pay for a ticket. He owned the sky. The air inside JFK Terminal 4 tasted like recycled anxiety and stale pretzels. It was a friction-heavy Tuesday morning, the kind where humidity clung to the glass walls, and the collective stress of 3,000 travelers created a low-level hum that vibrated in your teeth. Marcus Williams adjusted the strap of his canvas duffel bag, his shoulders rolling slightly to work out a knot of tension. He wasn't used to the terminal. He hadn't flown commercial in 8 years. The last time he'd stood in a TSA line, Quantum Dynamics was a garage startup in Austin, trying to convince venture capitalists that AI-driven logistics wasn't a pipe dream. Today, Quantum Dynamics was the invisible nervous system of the global economy, moving everything from microchips to medical isotopes across 6 continents. But today, Marcus wasn't the CEO. He wasn't the man whose face had graced the cover of Wired last month under the headline, "The $1 Trillion Algorithm." Today, he was just a son. His phone buzzed in the pocket of his charcoal gray hoodie. A text from his sister Carmen. "Mom is asking for you again. Doctors say her lucid windows are getting shorter. Hurry." Marcus swallowed hard, the lump in his throat tasting of bile. The Gulfstream G65. O was grounded in Teterboro with a hydraulic failure. Bad luck, or perhaps the universe testing his patience. He couldn't wait for the mechanic. He had booked the first seat available on Pan Atlantic Flight 292 to Atlanta. First class seat 1A. He didn't care about the champagne or the legroom. He just needed to be the first one off the plane. Marcus approached the gate, his eyes scanning the monitors. Boarding in 10 minutes flashed in reassuring green letters. He looked down at his attire-faded jeans, Nikes that had seen better days, and a hoodie that bore the logo of a defunct indie band. He hadn't slept in 48 hours, and his beard was bordering on unkempt. To the untrained eye, he looked like an exhausted grad student. Or, as he was often categorized by the prejudiced algorithms of society, a problem waiting to happen. 28 years ago, Elena Williams had stood in this same terminal pushing a cleaning cart through the corridors at 3 a.m. She wore a blue uniform that smelled of industrial disinfectant and carried dreams too big for anyone to believe. Marcus remembered watching her come home, her hands cracked and bleeding from harsh chemicals, and sit with him while he coded until 3 a.m. She didn't understand the lines of text on the screen, but she understood the passion in his eyes. "Baby," she used to say, "it doesn't matter what clothes you wear or how much money's in your pocket. What matters is what's up here." She'd tap his forehead, and what's in here, she'd place her hand on his heart. "Rich folks can buy respect, but they can't buy dignity. That's something you carry yourself." She had worked 3 jobs to buy him his first computer. A clunky refurbished tower that smelled like ozone and hummed like a dying refrigerator. It was on that computer that Marcus wrote his first algorithm. It was on that computer that he built the foundation of what would become a $50 billion empire. Elena Williams never got to ride in a first-class seat. She never got to see her son's face on magazine covers. But she got to see him graduate MIT summa cum laude. She got to see him hire his first employee. She got to see him become the man she always knew he could be. Now she was lying in Piedmont Hospital, her body failing, her mind drifting in and out of consciousness. The doctors said her organs were shutting down. The best they could do was make her comfortable. Marcus had been in a board meeting when Carmen called. He'd dropped everything, canceled a merger worth $2 billion, and booked the fastest way to Atlanta. His assistant had tried to arrange the private jet, but the hydraulic system had other plans. So here he was, standing in a commercial terminal for the first time in nearly a decade, looking like any other broke millennial trying to catch a flight. The irony wasn't lost on him. The woman who cleaned these floors had raised the man who now controlled the logistics that kept them running. He stepped up to the priority lane, the blue carpet worn thin by the tread of thousands of rollboard suitcases. There was no one in line. The gate agent, a young woman whose name tag read Rebecca Martinez, was typing furiously on her keyboard, her acrylic nails clicking like hail on a tin roof. She didn't look up. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice deep and raspy from lack of sleep. "Checking in for Flight 292. Rebecca kept typing. She chewed her gum with a rhythmic wet snapping sound. 10 seconds passed, then 15. Marcus glanced at the digital clock above her head. Every second felt like an hour when his mother was fading in a hospital bed 800 miles away. "Excuse me, Marcus," said a little louder this time. Rebecca stopped typing. She sighed, a long theatrical exhale that deflated her shoulders. She looked up, her eyes dragging over Marcus's hoodie, pausing on his sneakers and finally meeting his gaze with a look of pure distilled exhaustion mixed with disdain. "Economy boarding doesn't start for 30 minutes, sir," she said, her voice dripping with assumption. "Zones 4 and 5 need to wait in the general seating area until called." "I'm not in Zone 5, Marcus said, reaching into his pocket for his phone to pull up the boarding pass. "I'm in first, Seat 1A. Rebecca actually laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a sound. "Zone 1 is for our Diamond Medallion members and full-fare first-class passengers. Please step aside so I can finish preparing the flight." "I have a ticket," Marcus said, his patience thinning. He held out the phone. The QR code was bright and clear. Marcus Williams, Seat 1A. Rebecca didn't even look at the screen. She looked past him, waving a hand at a man in a bespoke Navy suit approaching the desk. "Mr. Hayes, so good to see you again." "Welcome back." The man's slicked back hair and smelling of expensive sandalwood breezed past Marcus, bumping his shoulder. "Thanks, Rebecca. Running late today. Hoping the lounge is still serving those mimosas." "For you always." She beamed, her demeanor transforming instantly from ice to syrup. Marcus stood his ground. He didn't move. The man in the suit glanced at Marcus, then back at Rebecca. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, Mr. Hayes. Just some confusion with the boarding zones," Rebecca said, casting a sharp look at Marcus. "Sir, I asked you to step aside." "And I told you I'm boarding," Marcus said, stepping back into the space the suit had vacated. He placed his phone directly on the scanner on the counter. Beep. The machine flashed green. 1A, Williams Marcus. Rebecca stared at the screen. Her gum stopped snapping. She blinked once, twice. The machine didn't lie, but her worldview clearly couldn't reconcile the data. A man looking like Marcus didn't sit in 1A. Not on her watch. The machine must be glitching, she muttered, reaching for the mouse. "Let me see your ID." Marcus produced his driver's license. She took it, holding it up to the light as if looking for a watermark, bending it slightly to check the lamination. It was a valid New York license. "This photo doesn't look like you," she said. "It was taken 3 years ago." "I have a beard now," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. "Look, my mother is in the ICU. I really just need to get on this plane. Don't give me a sob story, Rebecca snapped. She typed something into her terminal. There's a flag on this reservation. What flag? Security flag. Payment verification needed. She looked at him with a triumphant smirk. Did you buy this ticket with a stolen card, sir? It happens a lot with last-minute first-class bookings. Marcus felt the blood heat up in his neck. He owned the bank that issued the card. I bought it with my American Express Centurion. It cleared 4 hours ago. Well, the computer says pending verification, and until it clears, you're not getting on this bird. She pointed to the side. Stand over there. I need to call a manager. Marcus looked at the gate door. The pilots were walking down the jet bridge. The clock was ticking. Call him, Marcus said. Call him now. 5 minutes later, a man walked out of the administrative door behind the counter. He moved with the swagger of a man who ruled a very small kingdom with an iron fist. He wore a pan-Atlantic blazer that was a size too tight around the midsection, and his name tag, gold-plated, read Blake Thompson, Station Manager. Blake didn't look at Marcus. He went straight to Rebecca, leaning in as she whispered in his ear. They both glanced at Marcus, then back at the screen. Blake nodded, adjusting his tie. He turned to Marcus, crossing his arms over his chest. Mr. Williams, is it? Blake asked, pronouncing the name as if it were a foreign object. That's right, Marcus said. Your agent says there's a payment issue. I have the receipt right here on my banking app. Apps can be faked, Blake said dismissively. We see it all the time. Photoshop is a powerful tool. It's a live app, Marcus said, unlocking his phone and holding it out. Look, you can see the transaction. Blake waved the phone away. I don't need to see your phone. I need to see it in my computer. And right now my computer says check docs. That means paperwork. That means we need to verify your identity and the source of funds before we can release a boarding pass. This is a domestic flight to Atlanta, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. And I'm already checked in. The scanner turned green. It turned green in error, Blake countered smoothly. Look, pal, let's be real. A ticket like this costs $3,000. Walk-up fare. You show up looking like you just rolled out of bed. No luggage agitated. You fit the profile of a credit card fraudster. It's my job to protect the airline's revenue. Profile, Marcus repeated. The word hung in the air, heavy and charged. You mean I fit a profile because of my skin color and my hoodie? Don't play the race card with me. Blake snapped, his face reddening slightly. This is about security. And, frankly, your attitude is confirming my suspicions. Aggressive behavior is grounds for denial of boarding regardless of your ticket status. I haven't raised my voice, Marcus said. I'm asking you to do your job. Check the confirmation code, HZ99QA. Call your corporate security desk if you have to. They will clear it in 10 seconds. I don't have time to sit on hold with corporate for 20 minutes just so you can fly first class. Blake scoffed. He turned to Rebecca. Do we have any standbys for first? Rebecca's eyes lit up. Yes, actually. Mr. Hayes requested an upgrade if a seat opened up. And we have a deadheading pilot who needs a seat. Great, Blake said. Upgrade, Mr. Hayes to 1A. Give the jump seat to the pilot. Marcus stepped forward, placing his hands on the counter. The metal was cold under his palms. You are giving away my seat. It's not your seat until you're on the plane, Blake said, turning his back to Marcus to watch Rebecca type. And right now your reservation is suspended. From across the terminal, Sarah Kim, a travel blogger from San Francisco, had been watching the exchange unfold. She raised her phone and started recording. This is happening live at JFK Terminal 4, she whispered to her camera. A black passenger is being denied boarding for his first-class seat. This is exactly the kind of discrimination we need to document. If you give away that seat, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream, you are going to regret it. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will regret it. Blake spun around, a sneer plastered on his face. "Is that a threat? Rebecca? Did you hear that?" He threatened a Federal Airline employee. "I heard it." "Blake," Rebecca chirped, printing out a new boarding pass. She handed it to the man in the navy suit. "Here you go, Mr. Hayes. Seat 1A. Enjoy the flight." Hayes took the ticket, smirking at Marcus. "Tough break, buddy. Maybe try the bus next time." Marcus watched Hayes walk down the jet bridge. The rage that had been simmering in his gut began to cool, hardening into something brittle and sharp. It was the cold clarity he felt right before a hostile takeover. It was the feeling he had when he crushed a competitor who tried to steal his IP. From behind them, other passengers had started to take notice. An elderly white woman clutched her purse tighter. A businessman in a gray suit shook his head in disgust, though whether at Marcus or at Blake was unclear. Sarah Kim continued filming, her voice steady as she narrated. "What we're witnessing here is racial profiling in real time. This passenger has a valid ticket, a valid ID and valid payment method. Yet he's being denied boarding because, according to the station manager, he doesn't look like he belongs in first class." Blake noticed the phone pointed in his direction. He straightened his blazer and walked toward Sarah. "Ma'am, you need to stop recording. This is a security situation. This is public space," Sarah said firmly, "and this is newsworthy. A paying customer is being discriminated against." "No one is being discriminated against," Blake said loudly, ensuring his voice carried to the growing crowd. "We have standard protocols for payment verification. This individual failed to meet those protocols." Marcus's phone buzzed. "Another text from Carmen, Mom, keeps saying your name. Please hurry." He closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. When he opened them, Blake was standing inches from his face. Sir Blake said, pointing a finger at Marcus's chest. "I'm going to ask you to leave the gate area. If you don't, I'm calling Port Authority police to have you escorted out. You're done flying Pan Atlantic today." Blake paused, his eyes glittering with malicious satisfaction. "Actually, I'm putting a note in your file. You're likely done flying us. Period." The crowd around them had grown larger. Some passengers pulled out their phones to record. Others whispered among themselves. A few looked genuinely uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. Marcus looked at Blake Thompson for a long moment. He memorized the man's face, the way his eyes were too close together, the coffee stain on his tie, the arrogance that radiated off him like heat off pavement. He thought about his mother lying in a hospital bed asking for him. He thought about Elena Williams pushing that cleaning cart through these same hallways 30 years ago. He thought about dignity. "You're denying me boarding because of paperwork?" Marcus asked, one last time. "That is your official stance. That is what you want to go on record. Paperwork, security, risk, belligerent behavior. Take your pick." Blake laughed. "I run this terminal, kid. My word is law. Now get lost before I have you arrested." Marcus stared at Blake for another beat, then slowly backed away from the counter. "Smart move," Blake called after him. "Go home." But Marcus didn't go home. He walked about 50 feet to a bank of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the tarmac. He could see the Pan Atlantic Boeing 737, the very plane he was supposed to be on. He watched the baggage handlers loading the cargo. He took a deep breath, pulled out his phone, and dialed a number. It wasn't his mother. It wasn't his sister. He dialed Arthur Rodriguez, his chief legal officer. Marcus Arthur's voice was crisp. "I thought you were in the air." "I'm not," Marcus said. "I've been denied boarding. Pan Atlantic, JFK." "Denied. Why is the flight overbooked?" "No. The station manager, Mr. Blake Thompson, decided I didn't look the part. Said there was a paperwork error with my payment. Gave my seat to a buddy of his." "Jesus," Arthur sighed. "I'll get the legal team on it. We'll sue them for discrimination. It'll take 6 months, but we'll get a settlement." No, Marcus said. I don't want a settlement, Arthur. I don't have 6 months. My mother is dying. I'm sorry, Marcus. What do you want to do? I can charter another jet, but it'll take 2 hours to get to you. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the ground crew prepare his stolen plane for departure. I want you to pull up the Quantum Pan-Atlantic Logistics contract, Marcus said. There was silence on the other end of the line. Heavy, pregnant silence. Marcus Arthur said slowly that contract is worth $400 million a year to Pan-Atlantic. It covers all their air cargo for the East Coast. It's 15% of their total operating revenue. I know, Marcus said. And Clause 14.3, the reputational harm clause. Yes. It allows Quantum Dynamics to terminate the agreement immediately if Pan-Atlantic representatives engage in conduct that reflects poorly on our partnership or violates civil rights. Send me the termination notice, Marcus said. Marcus, if you sign that, their stock will tank. They're leveraged to the hilt on the new Airbus order. If they lose our contract, the credit rating agencies will downgrade them to junk status by lunch. You could bankrupt the airline. Marcus looked back at the gate. Blake Thompson was high-fiving Hayes just before he disappeared down the bridge. They were laughing at the guy in the hoodie. Send it, Marcus said. Sent Arthur replied. It's in your DocuSign. From his position by the window, Marcus could see into the plane through the small windows. Hayes was settling into seat 1, his seat already sipping what looked like champagne. The boarding pass scanner at the gate beeped repeatedly as other passengers checked in. Zone 2, Zone 3. The plane was filling up. Blake Thompson stood behind the counter like a king surveying his domain. He made jokes with Rebecca about the troublemaker they'd just handled. He didn't know that his kingdom was about to crumble. Marcus opened his email. The PDF loaded. Notice of immediate termination of service agreement. He scrolled to the bottom. The signature line waited. Behind him, Sarah Kim was still recording now, interviewing other passengers about what they'd witnessed. Did you see how they treated that man? She asked a young couple from Portland. It was awful, the woman said. He had a valid ticket. He was polite. They just decided he didn't belong. This is exactly why I don't fly anymore, an older black man said into Sarah's camera. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't look the part, they'll find a reason to keep you out. Marcus listened to their voices, but his focus was on the screen in his hand. He didn't hesitate. He used his thumb to draw his signature. Marcus J. Williams. He hit finish. He looked up at the clock, 10:14 a.m. It's done, Marcus said into the phone. Arthur, call their CEO. Tell him why. Marcus hung up. He sat down on one of the hard plastic chairs and waited. He didn't have to wait long. At 10:15 a.m., 60 seconds after Marcus Williams signed the PDF, the world was still normal for almost everyone. But inside the high-frequency trading servers located in a chilled basement in New Jersey, a digital slaughter had begun. The termination notice from Quantum Dynamics hit the SEC filings database instantly, an automatic requirement for a material event affecting a publicly traded partner. The algorithms, those unfeeling light-speed predators of the stock market, read the filing before a human eye ever could. They saw 2 keywords: termination and quantum. It was like blood in the water. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, a junior analyst for Goldman Sachs named Timothy Chen was the first to shout. He was staring at his Bloomberg terminal, his sandwich halfway to his mouth. Holy shit! A just broke support. What? His manager barked, not looking up from his own screens. They're up 2 points on the earnings beat. No, Timothy yelled, standing up now. Look at the candle. They just dropped 4-5. It's crashing. On the big board, the ticker symbol. PA. A Pan-Atlantic Airways flashed violent red. $42.50, $38.20, $34.15. The drop wasn't a slide, it was an elevator cable snapping. In Midtown Manhattan, on the 47th floor of Pan Atlantic headquarters, the atmosphere shifted from Tuesday boredom to air raid panic in the span of 3 breaths. Phones began to ring. All of them. Simultaneously. The cacophony was deafening. David Cross, the CEO of Pan Atlantic, was in the middle of a vanity putt on the mini-green installed in his corner office. He was a man who prided himself on control. Perfect hair, perfect tan, and a reputation for crushing unions and quarterly projections with equal efficiency. His secretary, a usually composed woman named Martha, burst into the office without knocking. Her face was the color of ash. "Mr. Cross," she gasped. "CNBC. You need to turn it on, now." David frowned, annoyed at the interruption. "Martha, I told you I'm prepping for the shareholder call at noon." "There won't be a shareholder call if you don't look at the TV," she screamed. David froze. He had never heard Martha raise her voice in 10 years. He grabbed the remote and flicked on the wall-mounted screen. Jim Cramer was on screen, his sleeves rolled up, waving a terrifying chart. Absolute carnage for the legacy carrier. We are seeing complete capitulation. Pan Atlantic has just lost its primary logistics partner. Quantum Dynamics has pulled the plug. I repeat, Quantum has pulled the plug. This isn't just a bad quarter, folks. This is an existential threat. If they lose the Quantum cargo contract, their liquidity dries up by Friday. Sell. 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 David Cross felt the blood drain from his extremities. The Quantum contract. It was the golden goose. It was the collateral for their entire fleet modernization loan. Without it, the banks would call in the debts immediately. They would be insolvent. "Get me Arthur Rodriguez at Quantum," David snarled, grabbing his desk phone. "Get him on the line now." "What the hell happened? We hit all our metrics. We delivered everything on time." "I have him on line." "One?" Martha said, her hands shaking. David slammed the button. "Arthur, what is the meaning of this? You can't just terminate a $400 million contract via email. We have a deal." "I'll sue you into the Stone Age." Arthur Rodriguez's voice came through the speakerphone, calm, cold, and utterly detached. "Mr. Cross, you don't have grounds to sue. We invoked Clause 14.3. "Reputational harm," David screamed. "What reputational harm? We haven't had a scandal in 5 years. Our safety record is pristine." "It's not about safety," Arthur said. "It's about how you treat people, specifically how your staff treats my client." "Who? What client?" David was pacing now, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'll fire whoever it is. I'll fire the whole department." "Just tell me what happened." "Your station manager at JFK," Arthur said. "A Mr. Blake Thompson. He just denied boarding to a passenger in first class, claimed there was a paperwork issue, accused the passenger of fraud." David stopped pacing. He blinked. "You canceled a $500 million deal because one of my gate agents was rude to a passenger. Are you insane?" "Who was the passenger? A senator? A celebrity?" "No," Arthur said. The silence in the CEO's office was absolute, heavier than lead. The passenger was Marcus Williams. David Cross dropped the phone. It clattered against the mahogany desk. He looked at the TV screen. PAA was trading at $18.50. They had lost 60% of their value in 12 minutes. He picked up the phone again, his hand trembling so violently he could barely hold the receiver. Marcus Williams was at JFK Flying Commercial. He was trying to get to his dying mother. Arthur continued, his voice sharpening like a blade. He was in seat 1A. Your manager kicked him out, accused him of stealing the credit card, which, by the way, is issued by a bank Marcus owns, and gave his seat to a buddy. Arthur paused, letting that sink in. Marcus is currently sitting at gate B14 watching your stock price destroy your career. David Cross's knees buckled. He actually had to grab the edge of his desk to stay upright. "Connect me to JFK operations," he whispered. "Now, Mr. Cross. Connect me to JFK operations right now." His voice was so loud that Martha jumped in her chair outside his office. Within seconds, he was connected to the airport's operational center. "This is Cross. Connect me to Gate B14. Emergency priority." Back at Gate B14, the atmosphere was blissfully ignorant of the financial apocalypse occurring outside. Blake Thompson was leaning against the counter, recounting the story to a younger gate agent, laughing as he mimicked Marcus's voice. "I own the credit card," Blake mocked, pitching his voice high and whiny. "Yeah, right, buddy. And I own the moon. These guys, I swear, they buy a hoodie at Goodwill and think they can intimidate me." Rebecca giggled, sipping her iced coffee. "You showed him Blake. Did you see his face when you gave the seat to Mr. Hayes Priceless?" "That's how you handle the riffraff," Blake said, puffing out his chest. "Keep the skies classy." Behind them, the Boeing 737 had pushed back from the gate. It was sitting on the tarmac engines, spooling up, preparing to taxi. Marcus Williams sat in the plastic chair by the window. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't looking at stock tickers. He was watching the plane. He saw the nose gear turn. Suddenly, the red telephone on the wall behind the counter, the crash phone used only for extreme emergencies, began to ring. It was a loud, jarring mechanical trill that cut through all the terminal noise like a fire alarm. Blake jumped. He exchanged a confused look with Rebecca. "Is that a drill?" Rebecca asked. "Must be," Blake said. He walked over and picked it up, annoyance plastered on his face. "This is Thompson, station manager. We're busy here. Make it quick." Thompson. The voice on the other end was so loud Blake had to pull the receiver away from his ear. It was a roar of pure, unfiltered fury. It was a voice he recognized from the quarterly All Hands videos. It was the CEO, Mr. Cross. Blake stammered. "Sir, is everything okay? Shut up!" "David," Cross screamed. "Listen to me. Is Flight 292 in the air?" No, sir. It just pushed back. It's taxiing to the runway." "Stop it!" Cross shrieked. "Order it back to the gate immediately. Do not let that plane take off." Blake felt a cold pit open in his stomach. "Sir, I don't understand. Is there a bomb threat?" "A maintenance issue. The threat is you," Cross bellowed. "You denied boarding to Marcus Williams." Blake's eyes darted to the waiting area. The man in the hoodie was still there. He hadn't moved. He was just looking at Blake calmly, like he was watching a nature documentary. The guy in the hoodie," Blake whispered. "Sir, he was a security risk. His payment was valid, you imbecile. He is Marcus Williams, Quantum Dynamics. He just canceled our logistics contract. Our stock is down 60%. Blake's knees buckled. He actually had to grab the counter to stop from falling. He looked at the TV screen mounted above the bar across the hall. The chyron on CNN was bright red. Pan-Atlantic stock crashes after quantum contract termination. "Oh, God," Blake whispered. "Fix this," Cross screamed. "Get that plane back to the gate. Get Mr. Williams on that plane. I don't care if you have to carry him on your back. I don't care if you have to kick everyone else off. If he doesn't fly, you don't just lose your job. Thompson, I will personally sue you for every penny you will ever earn for the rest of your miserable life. Do it now." The line went dead. Blake stood there, the receiver humming in his hand. He looked at Rebecca. She was staring at the TV screen, her mouth open, her iced coffee dripping condensation onto the desk. "Blake," she whispered, "look at the news." Blake didn't look. He grabbed his radio. His hands were shaking so hard he dropped it twice before he could key the mic. "Tower, ramp control. This is Gate B14. His voice cracked like a teenager's. "Bring Flight 292 back to the gate. Emergency return. B-14 say again." The pilot's voice came over the radio, confused. "We are number 2 for takeoff. What is the emergency medical?" "No," Gavin squeaked. "Operational error. We left a passenger behind. Bring it back. Now." There was a long pause. "Copy B-14. Returning to gate. You guys really screwed the pooch on this one." Blake dropped the radio. He ran out from behind the counter. He ran past the line of confused Zone 5 passengers. He ran straight to the man in the hoodie. Marcus watched him come. He didn't stand up. He just watched Blake skid to a halt in front of him, sweating, panting, his eyes wide with terror. "Mr. Williams!" Blake gasped, struggling to catch his breath. "Mr. Williams, sir." "It's just Marcus," he said quietly. "Or pal. I believe that's what you called me." "Sir, please," Blake pleaded, wringing his hands. "There has been a terrible mistake, a misunderstanding. The computer, it glitched." "I see that now. It was a glitch." "It wasn't a glitch," Blake Marcus said, standing up slowly. He towered over the station manager. "It was a choice." "You made a choice. I am so sorry," Blake stammered. "We are bringing the plane back right now. It's turning around. We are going to get you on board. Seat 1A. I'll kick Mr. Hayes off myself, I swear." Marcus looked out the window. The massive 737 was indeed turning its engines, whining as it taxied back toward them. It was a move that cost the airline thousands in fuel and delay fees. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, the financial carnage was accelerating. The New York Stock Exchange had halted trading on PAA twice in 15 minutes. Each time trading resumed, the stock dropped further. Pension funds were dumping millions of shares. Hedge funds were shorting with surgical precision. On CNBC, analysts were scrambling to understand the speed of the collapse. "I've never seen anything like this," said Rebecca Patterson, a market strategist at Goldman Sachs. Pan Atlantic went from a stable dividend play to bankruptcy watch in 20 minutes. The quantum dynamics contract was worth more than anyone realized. It wasn't just revenue. It was the foundation of their entire debt structure. The camera cut to the Pan Atlantic headquarters in Manhattan. Security guards were already escorting employees out of the building with cardboard boxes. Back at JFK, Blake's radio crackled to life. "B-14, this is Flight 292. We're on final approach to the gate. Please have ground crew standing by. And someone better have a damn good explanation for this." "Copy 292, Blake said into the radio. Then he turned back to Marcus. "So you'll board, and maybe call your office. Undo the email." Marcus adjusted his duffel bag. He looked at Blake with eyes that held zero sympathy. "I'll board," Marcus said. "I need to see my mother." Blake's face lit up with desperate hope. But as for the email, Marcus leaned in close. That wasn't a glitch either. The color drained from Blake's face as the reality hit him. This wasn't just about a denied boarding. This was about consequences. This was about a man who had spent his life building systems and who understood exactly how to break them. In the Pan Atlantic corporate offices, the emergency board meeting had already begun. 8 directors gathered around a conference table, their faces reflecting the grim reality of their situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Board Chairman Patricia Webb, "we are facing an extinction-level event. Without the quantum contract, our debt-to-equity ratio becomes untenable. The banks will call in our fleet loans by close of business." "How did this happen?" demanded board member Robert Hayes Jonathan's uncle and a major shareholder. "How does a logistics contract get terminated over a passenger complaint?" David Cross, joining by video conference from his office, looked like a broken man. Because the passenger wasn't just any passenger. It was Marcus Williams. The Marcus Williams. The room fell silent. And according to Arthur Rodriguez, our station manager at JFK treated him like a criminal, denied him boarding, accused him of credit card fraud. Jesus Christ, Webb muttered. Do we have any legal recourse? Nuncross said. The contract has an ironclad reputational harm clause. Quantum can terminate for any discriminatory behavior by our employees. And they just did. The return of Flight 292 was a spectacle that the passengers of Terminal 4 would talk about for years. A fully loaded Boeing 737-800 Heavy with fuel and seated passengers does not simply come back to the gate. It is a logistical nightmare. Ground crews had to scramble clearing baggage carts that had already begun moving to the next job. Marshals waved glowing batons with frantic urgency. The jet bridge, which had been retracted, began its slow mechanical groan back toward the fuselage. Inside the plane, confusion had mutated into irritation. In Seat 1, a Jonathan Hayes was sipping a pre-flight scotch, feeling exceptionally pleased with himself. He had stretched out his legs, enjoying the extra room that karma had apparently gifted him. He watched the tarmac moving past the window, then frowned as the movement stopped and reversed. Captain, he called to the flight attendant, a young woman named Jessica who looked visibly shaken. Why are we turning around? I have a meeting in Buckhead at 2. I'm not sure, Sir Jessica said, pressing her earpiece against her head. The captain said operational necessity. The plane lurched to a halt. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off. The cabin door hissed as pressure equalized, then swung open. Hayes expected a mechanic. He expected perhaps a federal marshal escorting a prisoner. Instead, he saw Blake Thompson. The station manager looked like he had run a marathon through a swamp. His face was a mask of red blotches and sweat. His tie was askew. He practically stumbled onto the plane, his eyes scanning the cabin wildly until they landed on Hayes. Mr. Hayes. Blake panted, rushing down the short aisle of first class. I need you to get up. Hayes laughed, swirling his ice cubes. Excuse me, I'm comfortable, Blake. Whatever the issue is, fix it while I finish this. There is no fixing it, Blake hissed, his voice trembling. I need your seat, right now. You have to get off the plane. Are you insane? Hayes's voice rose, attracting the attention of the entire cabin. You gave me this seat. I have a boarding pass. I'm not going anywhere. Sir, please, Blake begged. He was no longer the arrogant king of the terminal. He was a desperate man watching his life disintegrate. I made a mistake, a massive legal mistake. The seat belongs to another passenger. If you don't move, the plane doesn't leave. That sounds like a you problem. Hayes sneered. I'm a platinum member. You touch me, and I'll have your badge. Blake closed his eyes for a second, looking as if he might vomit. He then turned to Jessica, the flight attendant. Call the captain. Tell him to authorize a removal. I'm right here. A deep voice boomed from the cockpit. Captain Miller, a veteran pilot with gray temples and zero patience for delays, stepped out. He looked at Blake, then at Hayes. What's the holdup? Operations is screaming at me about a VIP. This passenger refuses to deplane, Blake said, pointing at Hayes. Captain Miller looked at Hayes. Sir, get your bag. You're off. This is tyranny, Hayes shouted, standing up, his face flushing purple. I will sue this airline. Do you know who I am? I run a hedge fund, and the man waiting on the jet bridge runs the economy, Captain Miller said dryly. Get off my plane. Hayes huffed, grabbing his leather briefcase. He shoved past Blake, muttering curses. He stomped up the aisle and out the door. As Hayes exited the jet bridge, he almost collided with Marcus Williams. Marcus was standing there calmly, his hands in the pockets of his hoodie. He watched Hayes storm past. Hayes stopped. He looked at Marcus, then back at the plane, then at his own ticket. The realization hit him slowly like a tide coming in. The bum he had mocked wasn't a bum. You, Hayes whispered. Marcus didn't say a word. He just tilted his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in power. "Mr." Williams Blake's voice came from the plane door. He was practically bowing. "Your seat is ready, sir. We have fresh champagne waiting, or water, whatever you want." Marcus walked down the jet bridge. The sound of his sneakers on the metal floor was the only sound in the tunnel. He stepped onto the plane. The entire first-class cabin was staring at him. They had heard the commotion. They saw the bum walk in. They saw the station manager trembling like a leaf. Marcus didn't look at them. He sat down in seat 1A. The leather was still warm from haze. Blake lingered at the door, looking at Marcus with the eyes of a dog waiting to be kicked. "Sir, about the contract. Is there any chance we can discuss it once you land?" Marcus buckled his seatbelt. He looked out the window at the baggage handlers who were now staring up at the plane, confused by the chaos. Blake Marcus said, not turning his head, "Yes, sir. Get off the plane." Blake swallowed hard. He nodded, backed out of the cabin, and the heavy door slammed shut between them. The flight to Atlanta was the quietest 2 hours and 14 minutes in the history of Pan-Atlantic Airways. Usually first class is a social club. Businessmen swap cards. Vacationers chat about hotels, and the alcohol flows freely. Today, it was a tomb. The flight attendants, Jessica and her colleague Mark, moved with the terrifying precision of bomb disposal experts. They had been briefed by Captain Miller via the interphone before takeoff. Do not speak to 1A unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact for too long. Give him whatever he wants. Marcus didn't want anything. He declined the hot towel. He declined the meal service. He declined the drink. He just stared out the window, watching the cloud layer beneath them. He wasn't thinking about the stock price. He wasn't thinking about Blake Thompson. He was thinking about his mother. He remembered when she worked 2 jobs, one as a cleaner at a high school, another stocking shelves at a grocery store just to buy him his first computer. It was a clunky, refurbished tower that smelled like ozone. He remembered how she would come home, her hands cracked and bleeding from the harsh chemicals, and sit with him while he coded until 3 a.m. She didn't understand the lines of text on the screen, but she understood the passion in his eyes. "She's the only reason I'm here," Marcus thought, "and I'm wasting time fighting with gate agents." He pulled out his phone. He had connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. His inbox was a disaster zone. 142 missed calls, 3,000 plus new emails. The subject lines were a symphony of panic. Urgent Pan-Atlantic CEO requesting call, Board of Directors, emergency meeting. SEC inquiry regarding trading. Halt. CNBC interview request. He opened the news app. The headline was everywhere. The 30-minute crash. How a hoodie and a gate agent wiped out $4 billion. There was a photo of him taken by paparazzi years ago next to a photo of David Cross. The graph of PAA stock looked like a cliff edge. It had stabilized at $14.60, down nearly 65%. Trading had been halted by the NYSE 3 times in 1 hour. Marcus scrolled down to the comments at user_88. Wait, they kicked Williams off a plane. Do they know he builds the navigation software their planes use? LMAO at Crypto King, shorting. PAA was the play of the century. Karma is real. At flygirl_Jessica. I was at JFK. I saw it. The manager was a total jerk to him. Justice served. A notification popped up at the top of his screen. A text message from an unknown number, Mr. Williams. This is David Cross. Please, I'm begging you, answer the phone. We can fix this. I will fire everyone at JFK. I will name a plane after your mother. Just please rescind the termination notice. The banks are calling in our loans. Marcus read the message twice. Name a plane after your mother. He felt a flash of disgust. These people thought everything could be bought. They thought a name on a piece of aluminum made up for the indignity of being treated like a criminal because of how you looked. He typed a reply. his thumbs moving slowly, deliberately. "My mother doesn't need a plane, David. She needs her son. And because of your policies, I lost an hour. I can't buy that hour back. You can't buy your stock back. We're done." He hit send. Then he put the phone in Do Not Disturb mode and closed his eyes. Across the aisle, a passenger, a young man in a tech startup t-shirt, had been surreptitiously glancing at Marcus's phone. He saw the text. He saw the recipient. The young man's eyes went wide. He pulled out his own phone and typed a message to his broker. "It's not over. Williams just told the CEO to go to hell. PAA is going to zero. Short everything." The plane began its descent into Atlanta. As the landing gear deployed with a heavy thud, Marcus felt the first tear slide down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly. He was a billionaire, a titan of industry, a destroyer of companies. But right now he was just a terrified boy hoping he wasn't too late. The wheels touched the runway. The reverse thrusters roared. As the plane taxied to the gate, Captain Miller came over the PA computer. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Atlanta. We ask that everyone remain seated to allow a passenger with a medical emergency in the family to deplane first. Thank you for your cooperation." It was a small gesture, too little too late, but Marcus appreciated it. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Marcus stood up. He grabbed his bag. No one else moved. The entire first-class cabin, usually a rush of people fighting to get their bags, sat still. They looked at him with a mixture of awe and fear. Marcus walked to the door. Jessica opened it. She looked like she wanted to say something, an apology maybe, but she couldn't find the words. "Thank you," Marcus said to her softly. It wasn't her fault. He walked up the jet bridge, his pace quickening into a jog. He burst into the terminal. He didn't look at the monitors. He didn't look for a driver. He ran straight for the exit, pushed through the revolving doors, and jumped into the first taxi in line. Piedmont Hospital. Marcus told the driver. "Fast as you can." The taxi sped off, leaving the airport behind, leaving the chaos, the ruined careers, and the crashing stock market in the rearview mirror. The automatic doors of Piedmont Hospital hissed open, and Marcus burst into the sterile, air-conditioned silence of the lobby. He was gasping for air not from physical exertion but from the suffocating weight of the last 4 hours. His chest heaved beneath the gray hoodie that had caused so much trouble, sweat soaking through the fabric. He didn't wait for the receptionist to look up. He knew the room number by heart, 404 ICU East Wing. He had memorized it from the text messages Carmen had sent him while he was trapped in the purgatory of JFK's Terminal 4. He bypassed the elevator, taking the stairs 2 at a time, his Nikes squeaking loudly against the linoleum. Every step was a prayer. Please be there. Please don't be gone. Please don't let a gate agent's ego be the reason I missed goodbye. When he reached the 4th floor, the atmosphere changed. The frantic energy of the outside world died here, replaced by the rhythmic mechanical breathing of ventilators and the soft, insistent beeping of cardiac monitors. It was a place where time didn't move in minutes or hours, but in heartbeats. He saw Carmen standing outside room 404. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, holding a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee. When she saw him, her face crumpled. "Marcus," she whispered. He froze. The silence in the hallway felt heavy enough to crush him. "Is she?" "She's still here," Carmen said, stepping forward to hug him. "But it's close. The doctors said her vitals dropped an hour ago. She's been asking for you in her sleep." Marcus let out a breath that felt like a scream leaving his body. He nodded, pulling away gently. He wiped his face with his sleeve, trying to compose himself. He couldn't go in there looking like a wreck. He needed to be the rock she always told him he was. He pushed the door open. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of the medical equipment. Elena Williams lay in the center of the bed, looking impossibly small. This was the woman who had worked 3 jobs to put him through Georgia Tech. This was the woman who had stared down landlords when the rent was late and stared down teachers who said her son was too disruptive because he was bored in math class. Now she looked fragile, her skin the texture of parchment paper. Marcus walked to the bedside. He pulled up a plastic chair and sat down, taking her hand. It was cold, but alive. "Mom?" he whispered. "I'm here. It's Marcus." For a long minute, there was no response, just the whoosh click of the machine helping her breathe. Then slowly her eyelids fluttered. They opened, revealing eyes that were cloudy but still held that fierce, familiar spark. She turned her head an inch. "Marcus?" Her voice was a dry rasp, barely audible. "Yeah, Mom. I'm right here." "You're late," she whispered, a faint teasing smile touching her lips. Marcus laughed, a wet, choking sound. "I know. I'm sorry. I ran into some paperwork." "Always working?" She sighed, her thumb brushing the back of his hand. "You need to rest, baby. You look tired." "I will," he promised. "I'm going to take a long break. Just sit here with you." "Good," she breathed. Her eyes drifted shut again. "Stay. I'm not going anywhere." Marcus sat there for what felt like an eternity. He watched the green line on the monitor rise and fall. He watched the rise of her chest. The panic of the airport began to fade, replaced by a profound, simmering clarity. Outside this room, the world was burning, and he had lit the match. His phone, which he had placed face down on the bedside table, began to buzz. It wasn't a text vibration. It was a continuous, angry hum. Someone was calling. Then it stopped. Then it started again immediately. Marcus frowned. He picked it up. "Arthur Rodriguez. Incoming call." Marcus stood up and walked to the window looking out at the Atlanta skyline. He slid the answer button. "This better be important, Arthur," Marcus said, his voice low. "Important, Marcus. Turn on the news. It's a bloodbath. The NYSE just halted trading on Pan Atlantic for the 4th time. The stock is at $6.60. It was $42 this morning. I know Marcus said watching a pigeon land on the windowsill." "I signed the order. It's not just the stock, Marcus." The board of directors just finished an emergency meeting. They voted unanimously. David Cross is out. Fired. Security just escorted him out of the building. They're scrambling, Marcus. They're insolvent. The banks have called in the fleet loans. Without the quantum contract, they have zero liquidity. They're filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the morning. Marcus didn't blink. Okay, Arthur sputtered. "Marcus, do you understand what you've done? You've effectively killed a legacy airline in 6 hours. There are 20,000 employees who are going to wake up tomorrow wondering if they have jobs." Marcus looked back at his mother. He thought about the cleaning lady pushing a cart in the terminal. He thought about the pilots. He thought about Jessica, the terrified flight attendant who had served him water with shaking hands. They were innocent. They were just people trying to pay rent, just like his mother had been. It wasn't their fault their boss was a monster. It wasn't their fault the structure was broken. Arthur Marcus said, his voice changing. The grief was gone, replaced by the cold, razor-sharp intellect that had made him a billionaire at 25. "Stop the bankruptcy filing. I can't stop it. I'm not their lawyer." "No," Marcus said, "but you represent the entity that is about to buy them." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Excuse me, I want to make an offer," Marcus said. "To acquire Pan Atlantic Airways. Assume the debt." "Marcus, are you delirious? Why would you buy a sinking ship? It's not a sinking ship. It's a good airline with bad leadership," Marcus said. "And I need a tax write-off. Besides, I think the logistics integration with quantum dynamics will be profitable in the long run, eventually." Arthur sighed, the sound of a man who knew better than to argue. Okay, what's the offer? They're desperate. They'll take anything. I'm offering $4.50 a share, Marcus said. That's a premium on the current crash price. It saves them from total liquidation. That's pennies, Arthur noted. But they have no choice. What are the terms? I have 3 conditions. Write them down. Ready. Condition 1. Marcus said, pressing his forehead against the cool glass of the window. I take 51% controlling interest immediately. I appoint the new CEO. I appoint the new board. The old guard is gone. No golden parachutes, no bonuses. They leave with what they came with. Standard hostile takeover, Arthur muttered. Done. Condition 2. Condition 2. A complete overhaul of company policy regarding passenger treatment, Marcus said. I want a new clause in the operating manual. It's called the Elena Rule. If a passenger has a verified medical emergency involving an immediate family member, they are not to be denied boarding for any administrative reason. No paperwork checks. No payment verification delays. They get on the plane. We figure out the money later. The Elena Rule. Arthur repeated softly. I like it. And the third condition. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He looked at his reflection in the glass. He saw the hoodie. He saw the beard. He saw the man Blake Thompson had laughed at. Condition 3 concerns personnel, Marcus said. Specifically, Mr. Blake Thompson, the station manager at JFK. Ah, Arthur said. I assumed you'd want him fired. I can have the termination letter drafted in 5 minutes. No, Marcus said. Don't fire him. Don't. If we fire him, he collects unemployment. He goes home, sits on his couch, and blames cancel culture for his problems. He never learns, Marcus said coldly. I want him transferred. Transferred where? We have a cargo logistics hub in Fairbanks, Alaska, Marcus said. It handles the transpolar freight routes. It's currently -20 degrees there. The job is overnight ramp supervisor. It involves de-icing cargo pallets. Outdoors. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Jesus, Arthur whispered. That's brutal. Offer him the transfer, Marcus said. Tell him it's the only position available in the company for him. If he takes it, he keeps his pension. If he quits, he loses everything. Let him decide if he wants to do the paperwork. You are a terrifying man, Marcus Williams, Arthur said, though there was a hint of admiration in his voice. I'm just a guy in a hoodie, Arthur. Get the deal done. Call me when I own the airline. Marcus hung up. He walked back to the chair and sat down. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him exhausted. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. He had just spent $500 million. He had decapitated a Fortune 500 company. He had sentenced a man to the frozen tundra. But then he felt a squeeze on his hand. He opened his eyes. His mother was looking at him again. She seemed a little stronger now, as if his presence was fueling her. Who were you talking to? She whispered. Just work, Mom, Marcus said softly. I was just fixing a mistake. Did you get in trouble? She asked. The eternal mother, always worried he was pushing too hard. Marcus smiled. He thought about the breaking news chyrons. He thought about the panic on Wall Street. He thought about the brand new pan-Atlantic jet that would soon bear her name on the side of the fuselage painted in gold letters. No, Mom, Marcus said, bringing her hand to his cheek. I didn't get in trouble. I just had to sign something. Paperwork, she murmured, her eyes closing again. Yeah, Marcus whispered. Just paperwork. He watched her sleep, the steady rhythm of the heart monitor filling the room. The stock price didn't matter here. The title of CEO didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that he was sitting in this chair. Blake Thompson had tried to use a piece of paper to stop him. He hadn't realized that for men like Marcus Williams, paper wasn't a barrier. It was a weapon. and he had just used it to reshape the world, all to ensure that no son would ever again have to fight a gate agent to hold his mother's hand. 3 days later, the acquisition was complete. Marcus Williams, at 32, became the majority owner of a legacy airline that employed 20,000 people across 6 continents. The press conference was held in the Pan-Atlantic headquarters building in the same conference room where David Cross had been fired. Marcus stood at the podium wearing a Navy suit for the first time in weeks, flanked by Arthur Rodriguez and the new board of directors. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began Pan-Atlantic Airways will continue to fly. But it will fly differently. The room was packed with reporters, financial analysts, and Pan-Atlantic employees. In the back, Blake Thompson sat in a folding chair, his termination letter in one hand and a transfer offer to Fairbanks in the other. His face was pale, his career hanging by a thread made of ice and pride. Effective immediately, Marcus continued, we are implementing new passenger service protocols. The Elena rule ensures that no passenger with a family medical emergency will ever be denied boarding due to administrative delays, because when someone's mother is dying, paperwork can wait. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Several employees nodded in approval. We are also restructuring our management training programs. Every supervisor, manager, and executive will undergo comprehensive bias awareness education, because how we treat people when they're vulnerable reveals who we really are as a company. Marcus's eyes found Blake in the crowd. For those who cannot adapt to these new standards, we have opportunities in our expanding cargo operations. Some are in more remote locations. Everyone gets to choose their own path forward. After the press conference, Blake approached the podium. He still held both papers. Mr. Williams, Blake said, his voice barely above a whisper, about Alaska. It's honest work, Marcus said simply. Outdoor work. Character-building work. The choice is yours, Blake. Fairbanks or unemployment. Dignity or destitution. Blake looked at the transfer papers. Fairbanks, -20 degrees. Overnight shifts, de-icing cargo in the frozen darkness of the Arctic Circle. But it came with a pension, health care, a chance to rebuild. He thought about his mortgage, his kids' college fund, his pride. He signed the transfer. Within 6 months, Pan-Atlantic stock had recovered to $38 per share. The Elena rule had been adopted by 3 other major airlines. Customer satisfaction scores reached historic highs. Blake Thompson spent his first Alaskan winter learning humility one frozen pallet at a time. The transformation of Pan-Atlantic Airways became a case study taught in business schools across the country. Not because of the hostile takeover those happened every day, but because of what happened next. Marcus appointed Dr. Sarah Kim, the travel blogger who had documented the original incident, as the new vice president of customer experience. Her first initiative was the creation of the Dignity Initiative, a passenger advocacy program that empowered frontline employees to make decisions based on human need rather than rigid policy. We trained our staff to see passengers as problems to be managed, Dr. Kim explained in an interview with Harvard Business Review. Now we train them to see passengers as people to be served. It's revolutionary because it's so simple. The Elena rule was expanded beyond medical emergencies. Passengers facing job interviews, military deployments, weddings, funerals, any life event where timing mattered received priority consideration. The rule stated simply, when life happens, we happen. Technology played a role too. Marcus's team at Quantum Dynamics developed an AI-powered customer service platform that could detect potential bias in real time. If a passenger was being treated differently based on appearance, name, or other protected characteristics, the system would flag the interaction for immediate supervisor review. The results were measurable. Discrimination complaints dropped by 87% in the first year. Employee satisfaction increased as staff felt empowered to help rather than hindered by bureaucracy. Other airlines took notice. Delta implemented similar training programs. United adopted a modified version of the Elena rule. American Airlines hired Dr. Kim as a consultant to overhaul their customer service protocols. The transformation reached beyond aviation. Hotels, restaurants, and retail companies began implementing dignity audits, regular assessments of how customers were treated across different demographic groups. Marcus rarely spoke publicly about the changes. When asked by Forbes magazine about his motivation, he said simply, "My mother taught me that respect costs nothing, but means everything. I just made it company policy." But the real measure of change wasn't in corporate policies or training manuals. It was in moments like these. A young black engineer flying to a job interview was upgraded to first class when his original flight was delayed, ensuring he arrived on time and refreshed. A Hispanic grandmother rushing to see her newborn granddaughter was escorted through security and personally driven to her gate by a supervisor. An elderly white man using a walker was given extra time to board without being questioned about his paperwork. Each incident was documented not for publicity but for proof. Proof that change was possible. Proof that dignity could be scaled. Proof that treating people like human beings was not just morally right but good business. 6 months after the acquisition, Marcus Williams sat in the same plastic chair in room 404 of Piedmont Hospital. But this time, Elena Williams was awake alert and arguing with the nurses about the hospital food. "They call this chicken soup," she said, holding up a spoonful of watery broth. "This is seasoned water with some lost chicken in it." Marcus laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd had in months. "I can have Arthur order you food from anywhere in the world, Mom. Just say the word." "Don't waste your money on fancy food," Elena scolded. "Save it for something important." Like what Elena looked at her son, really looked at him. He had aged in the past year, but there was something different in his eyes. The driven intensity was still there, but it was tempered by something softer. Peace, maybe. "Like making sure what happened to you doesn't happen to other people's sons and daughters," she said. Marcus nodded. "Already on it, Mom. We call it the Elena rule." "The Elena rule?" She raised an eyebrow. "You named something after me." "It ensures no passenger gets denied boarding when they're rushing to see someone they love," Marcus explained. "Seemed appropriate." Elena Williams smiled the same smile that had encouraged him through late nights of coding, through rejections from venture capitalists, through every challenge he'd ever faced. "That's my boy," she whispered. "Always fixing things." They sat in comfortable silence as the Atlanta sun set outside the window. Elena had recovered more than the doctors thought possible, defying prognosis and timelines with the sheer force of will that had raised a tech empire from a garage. "Marcus," she said suddenly, "what did you do to that man? The one at the airport?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "I offered him a chance to learn. He's working in Alaska now. It's cold, but it's honest work." "Good," Elena said firmly. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better, even people who treat others badly, especially them. The airline flying better than ever. Turns out when you treat people with dignity, they tend to fly with you more often." Elena nodded, satisfied. "And you? Are you happy?" Marcus looked out the window at the city lights beginning to twinkle to life. Somewhere out there, pan-Atlantic planes were taking off and landing, carrying people to reunions, opportunities, and new beginnings. In Alaska, Blake Thompson was finishing another shift, hopefully learning something about humility. On Wall Street, analysts were recommending PAA stock as a remarkable turnaround story. But here in this hospital room, none of that mattered. "Yeah, Mom," Marcus said, squeezing her hand. "I'm happy." And for the first time in his life, he truly was. So, what's the real takeaway from the fall and rise of Pan-Atlantic Airways? It's not just about karma, though, that played its part. It's about the hidden cost of assumptions. Blake Thompson looked at Marcus Williams and saw someone invisible, someone who didn't matter, someone who could be pushed aside to make room for a real person in a suit. He didn't know that the man in the hoodie held the keys to the kingdom. In business and in life, we are often tempted to judge value by appearance. We respect the title, not the human. Marcus reminded the world that true power isn't about volume or attire, it's about character. And the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate the quiet person who's patiently waiting for you to finish talking so they can sign the document that changes everything. Pan Atlantic paid a $4 billion tuition fee to learn that lesson. Hopefully you can learn it for free. Treat everyone with dignity, because tomorrow that person you dismissed might just buy the building. And if they're anything like Marcus Williams, they might just make it a better place for everyone.